What's going on, guys? Welcome back to Yankees in 10, brought to you by Mike and V Sports Talk. Special edition today. We're going over 10 minutes here. We're going to be doing a deep dive into not just the Yankees, but the MLB as a whole, what's been going on in the first half for each division, who we think the division winners are going to be going into the end of the season, and then potentially our big trade deadline moves that could be on the horizon. So a big episode today, and we're looking forward to giving it to you here. Yankees in 10, brought to you by Mike and V Sports Talk. All right, so we'll start with the AL East here. The Rays, 3 games ahead of the Yankees at the top of that division, but the Red Sox charging now 9 wins in a row. So really a 3-team race right there, even though they're 10 back from the first place spot. What you see in this division is a little bit of a World Series hangover from the Blue Jays, and then a major recession from the Orioles as well. Over the last couple of years, they've fallen off of that 100-win season. So again, really good teams, I would say. If you look at these rosters, they got a lot of great guys. And across the board, any team at the beginning of this year, you could have seen coming out of this division, even the Orioles potentially. But, again, your 2 front runners are going to be the Yankees and the Rays. The Red Sox now have fought their way back into a wild card spot. They're in a great position going into the second half. And everybody thought they were going to be sellers, but in this reality now, with how they've turned it around, they're likely to be buyers at this deadline unless they want to offload a big contract. So great position here in the AL East for a bunch of these teams, and even for the Blue Jays, they're technically in last place right now, 45-51, but they're not in a bad spot at all. They're only a couple games back as well from wild card spots. So all these teams are really, potentially could fight for a playoff spot. You don't know if the Blue Jays or the Orioles are going to try and do that, but they're all in contention. If we were to go back one by one here, we'll start with the Yankees. We've talked about it ad nauseum now with how they're waiting for people to come back from injury, Judge, Fried, Stanton, and what those guys can bring back to the lineup, how important they are for this team. You can't talk about it enough, right? We saw in the All-Star game, Bellinger and Ben Rice perform. Great players. Cam Schiller didn't get the All-Star start, but that's okay. Who cares? It doesn't really matter. He's had a great season, front runner right now for the Cy Young. Garrett Cole came back from injury, had a really hot start. He's cooled off a little bit. Rodon, same thing, cooled off a little bit. And then Will Warren, Ryan Weathers have given you very consistent quality innings at 4 ERAs apiece. So for this starting rotation, it's been doing well. You'd look to see a little bit of improvement there from a Garrett Cole, from a Rodon, but it's okay because at the end of the day, you can't pitch a perfect game every single week. So you can't have that expectation for the team. Moving to the bullpen, I would say a couple of red flags. Doval has not pitched great. Tim Hill has had 2 really strange stretches where he's, outside of them, has pitched really great, given up basically 0 runs, and then he's had a couple of stretches there where he's given up a couple home runs, a lot of power and some short stretches there. So don't love to see that. I do believe that the Yankees are going to bolster their bullpen a little bit, but they've had a Paul Blackburn be an absolute stud, honestly, out of the bullpen for them. And then obviously Bednar, Hedrick. So they do have quality pieces, good guys who didn't expect at the beginning of the year to turn into these great players, and they have. So for the Yankees now, looking, let's say as a whole for the pitching rotation here, first in ERA in MLB for their pitchers, and you wouldn't think it, right? I mean, they had that really hot start at the beginning, but there has been obviously this rocky little stretch here right before the All-Star break. So I don't know. Do we want them to make moves? Yes. Do I think they need to make a move like a Tarek Skubal? No, I don't think they need that, especially if it's not for a cheap price. I mean, it's a rental, so you're not giving up a George Lombard, you're not giving up a Spencer Jones, you're not giving up a Carlos Legrand. So any of those 3 guys are probably the 3 guys the Tigers would ask for. You're not going to give them up. It's that simple. The other moves that they can make, we talked about it previously, improving the lineup a little bit. Austin Wells, what does he look like out of the deadline? Really going to determine his fate for the team. And then also, do you want to make a move for another outfielder, right? Potentially, you don't know what the situation necessarily is going to be when Judge comes back. So do you want somebody who can fill in? Max Schumann has been great, but that's not somebody you want to rely on to be your 4th outfielder. So again, a lot of considerations to be made. The Yankees are in a really good spot as far as what they can do and who they want to be. But again, it's just kind of going out there and playing quality baseball. We talk about it all the time. Can they play at their level? Because if they can, then they're a World Series contender. Nobody in the American League should be able to mess with that team, with that roster, and that's about as simple as it could be. moving to the Tampa Bay Rays. Once again, the Moneyball Rays. Just a consistent roster filled with great players who you wouldn't think of, and then they just come and perform again. Chandler Simpson, Yandy Diaz, great guys. But honestly, their rotation, their bullpen, has been really stunning to me. You know, Drew Rasmussen, everybody knew that he was a good pitcher. He's pitched to an all-star level this year. But a bunch of the other guys that they have going for them have just stepped up to become quality arms and quality pieces to a level that you wouldn't have necessarily expected. And that's the kind of thing that you love to see from a team that's got a low budget, right? They're trying to make the most of what they have as opposed to tanking and just trying to get rid of draft capital, get rid of all their good contracts. So I do love to see that the Rays try to compete. That being said, I don't want to see a postseason game in Tampa Bay with no crowd. That's uninteresting to me. I'm not a fan of that. I don't think that Tampa Bay is the right place for the Rays to be because we've seen that they get no attendance. And partially it's the ownership, partially it's Tropicana Field being like a terrible baseball stadium. But I do believe that another thing is they just haven't been able to get a guy, a swing and miss, like here's just the dude of the team. You know, Yandy Diaz is great, and a lot of teams would love to have him, but I'm talking about an Aaron Judge or Bryce Harper, somebody that's going to draw more attendance to your games. And they don't have that. And unfortunately, because of their payroll situation, because they've got cheaper ownership, they're never really going to get to experience that. So again, you know, love the Rays, love what they've been doing. Don't want to see them in the postseason, not just as a competitor, but also just not interested in watching a game with no fans at it. So moving on from them, I do believe the biggest surprise as far as the AL East has been concerned is the Boston Red Sox. Now, again, go back 2 or 3 weeks, what were we talking about? The Red Sox are going to be massive sellers. This season has been a huge failure. Where are all the young pieces? All these guys got hurt. And then once again, just like last year, honestly, they turn it up right before the deadline and the All-Star break here, and all of a sudden they potentially are buyers. They put themselves in a great spot now, 46-48, 9 wins in a row. Again, Aroldis Chapman, I don't know where he went when he was on the Yankees. He went somewhere, became infinitely worse, and then after that goes to the Red Sox. Apparently, before he was a Red Sox, he never located his fastball intentionally. He just threw it as hard as he could. How he was able to be so successful at the major league level for so many years before that is mind-boggling to me. But of course now, with the Red Sox, him trying to throw his fastball to a spot, and he's got a sub-2 ERA for them over the 2 years that he's been there. An absolute stud, an absolute stallion in the back of that bullpen. The Red Sox would be stupid to trade him if they want to make any sort of push into this postseason, because he's a guy that every team wants to have at the back of their bullpen, and they have him at the back of their bullpen. So you don't want to make that move. I do believe for them, the keys to their season, honestly, are making sure everybody's healthy, right? You want a Roman Anthony to be the core of your team. He's the guy who you're going to look to and say, hey, 9th inning of a game, we want you up in that spot, right? Him or maybe Cedane Rafaela. Those are your two guys. Wilson Contreras has also been great, but I do believe for the Red Sox that their fans can uplift them at any moment. They have a great fan base. They're always going to be there, always going to be behind them, but it's whether or not the Red Sox can actually step up to the challenge, keep playing the baseball the way they've been playing, buy at the deadline, and then going into September, see where they're at. Because again, 48 losses, although they've been playing well, is still a lot to have at this All-Star break. So they're going to need, if they want to cross that 90-win threshold, to play a lot of good baseball down the stretch here. And I do believe they can do it. I do believe they have a good roster. But it's just going to be a question of whether or not they are talented enough, whether or not they can play well enough, and whether or not that starting pitching can really keep doing what it's been doing. I mean, Sonny Gray has been the center of that rotation, but other guys around him too have stepped up, and they've got to keep doing what they can do. Crochet, that's a situation that we don't have to discuss, but again, for the Red Sox, it's just what can you do at the deadline? What moves do you think you need to make? What moves can you make? And are you going to be buyers or sellers? And I guess, you know, in the 2 weeks until we kind of have that deadline is when they're going to have to make that decision. If they come out of this All-Star break very hot, you're going to see them buy. If they come out of this break middling, who knows? But if they come out of this break slow and they're losing, you know, 5, 10, 12 games before the deadline, you're not going to see them buy. You're going to see them sell, and Aroldis Chapman will no longer be a Boston Red Sox. So looking back again, the AL East as a whole, we're not going to go over the Orioles or the Blue Jays just because while they are still technically in contention, both of those teams are not going to be buying at the deadline. Maybe the Blue Jays will be, but I don't believe that. I believe this year was more of a reset for them, so I wouldn't see that happening. And then the Orioles have a lot that they're going to try and offer. Adley Rutschman potentially. So again, looking at the AL East as a whole, you got your two top teams, and then the Red Sox who are trying to fight for a wild card spot. Whole division is always pretty good. You've always got pretty strong teams there. If I had to make a pick right now, I do still think the Yankees win this division. I don't know how long the Rays are going to keep playing this elite baseball at home, 35-15 at home. The Yankees, meanwhile, 23-20 at home. It just doesn't really add up for me. What kind of home field advantage do the Tampa Bay Rays have, other than that they play in the Dome, right? The Yankees have that home field advantage. So I do believe at the end of the year, they got a 4-game set against the Rays, and we'll see who the better team is in that situation. Don't want to be in a tiebreaker scenario. You want to go win that division outright. But if they are in a tiebreaker scenario, I do believe the Yankees will take care of business in that situation. Moving on to the AL Central, you've got the White Sox and Cleveland at the top there. Then you got the Minnesota Twins and the Detroit Tigers fighting for that secondary position. So decent teams at the top, and then Kansas City at the bottom. Nobody's caring about them. Bobby Wood Jr. fans, I feel sorry for you, but it is what it is. So looking at this division, the White Sox, huge shocker here that they're going to be good. Couldn't believe it, honestly, but you know what? They did make moves in the season last year, trading for Miguel Vargas. He's an all-star this year, and then obviously signing Munetaka Murakami as well. So they've made moves to try and get better and get into a potential playoff position, but I didn't think anybody would see them jockeying for first place. Then again, it's the AL Central, so 5 games over 500, not that impressive, but hey, credit where credit's due there at the top of their division. Cleveland, always in it. J-Ram, one of the most underrated, underappreciated players in the MLB. He's doing a great job over there. Per the usual, he's going to end up being a Hall of Famer. They got a lot of guys who just play the game the right way, and they've had that small ball lineup, honestly, since 2022, 2023, 2024, 2025. Same consistent team. They're going to give you 85 to 88 wins every year, and they're playing good baseball once again. The Minnesota Twins are really interesting because once again, they come into the break hot. 7 of their last 10 they've won. And the question is, are they going to move on from Ryan Jeffers? Is Joe Ryan going to be on the market? What are they going to do at the trade deadline? And we've seen them be hot into the trade deadline before, and they still sell. So not really sure what kind of moves they're going to make there. Minnesota's always an interesting team because nobody really wants to go up there. You had your Miguel Sano, Nelson Cruz era, but that was really the peak of it. And, they've got, again, those 2 guys who I think a lot of teams would want, especially at the catcher position, but it's hard, man. I mean, you really have to sell, I think, if you're Minnesota, a little bit more than other teams do just because nobody's going to really want to make that move. So Minnesota's in a good spot, but I do not really know what they're going to do. They're always a question mark for me. Detroit, I think, is actually a little bit more interesting because this whole Tarek Skubal situation, everybody thought he was going to get moved at the deadline, and then all of a sudden they come roaring back from basically 20 games under 500. Now they're only 8, which, still 8 games under 500, but again, 7 out of their last 10 have been victories. Detroit's a really interesting situation. They bring back Verlander on his kind of swan song, honorary all-star, good stuff for him, great career he's had, obviously a Hall of Famer. But again, a really successful season last year. I thought they were going to build on it this year, honestly, and they got that super slow start. They're obviously coming back now. If I'm them, I still think you make this Tarek Skubal trade. I do think 6.5 in the AL Central is not hard enough to beat, but I don't think you necessarily need Tarek Skubal to still compete in this division. Now, I might sound crazy for saying that, back-to-back Cy Youngs, you don't necessarily need that guy, but it's the AL Central. In order to compete in the AL Central, I don't think you need that. I do think, however, that no chance that they win a World Series this year. But the roster that they have, I just don't think it's complete enough, even with Tarek Skubal. And so I do think that you want to make that trade, try and get as much assets as you can moving into next year and the following. And even potentially that could help you compete this year if you really do believe that. Again, that might sound crazy. That's just my opinion on it. I do think that Tarek Skubal could be a huge asset to certain teams. I don't think the Yankees are a team that would need a Tarek Skubal. Maybe, the Dodgers will just do what they do and trade for him, and yay, but I don't know. I'm not sure what destination is necessarily right for him. It's got to be a contender. It's got to be a team that's looking and says, hey, we're going to give up a couple of our prospects who are really good and potentially a current big leaguer to go get a Tarek Skubal, because that's what you're going to have to give up for a two-time Cy Young winner back-to-back seasons. So again, also making that $30 million this year, it's a tough situation. If I'm Detroit, I'm not keeping him, just because I do believe that even if they have him, I don't think they're winning a World Series this year. Who knows if the front office realizes that or not? It's really an interesting situation, but I would say for them, again, I think you sell at the deadline. With Tarek Skubal, I think you try and buy in other spots, though, because you can still win this AL Central. It's just going to be tough to win a World Series. And I do believe that gathering those assets and building for the future is more important, especially with the youth that they have on that roster. So, again, looking at this AL Central, if I had to give you one winner, man, I'm going to say the White Sox. I do believe that just with how they've played as a team this year and how youthful that they are, I don't think they're going to go far necessarily, but it reminds me of the Royals from a couple years back, where they're just a fun team. They've got a lot of young guys. They play the game the right way. They hit for power a lot. They don't really hit for average, but their pitching is solid. And then they might win a playoff series, but I don't see them doing anything really more than that. But I do see them winning the AL Central, winning that division. So give it to the Chicago White Sox. All right, so for our final division in the American League, the AL West. Perennial trash. No, but in all seriousness, after this Houston domination that we saw for 7 or 8 years, there hasn't been really a team that stepped up to the moment. And, the Rangers won that World Series, so we'll give them credit there, but there hasn't been a team that's really exceeded expectations, gone really far. Last year, you had the Mariners go deep into the playoffs, go into the ALCS, and right now this year they're 48-49. And Mr. MVP, runner-up, Cal Raleigh, having one of the worst seasons that he's had in his career. So really a weird situation in this AL West. Right now at the top, you got the Rangers. The Mariners are a game and a half back. Houston 3 back. And then the Athletics, who got off to a torrid start and then slowed way back down to where the Athletics belong. They're 1-9 in their last 10 games. Looking at this division, mid across the board. Houston now, Jose Altuve is the only person left from that organization winning in 2017. Pretty crazy to say, considering how much we still dislike guys like Yordan Alvarez, but Altuve is the only guy left from that 2017 World Series championship team, and that's pretty wild to say. The rest of this division, though, nobody really strikes fear into your heart. The Rangers, are they going to move a Corey Seager potentially? At the top of their division, but 5-5 in their last 10, not really playing great baseball. And a guy who next year is going to basically have his no-trade clause locked in because he's going to become a 10-5 player. So do you want to move him before that happens? Is that what you're trying to do? The Mariners, listen, I love the Mariners. I love Ken Griffey Jr. is my favorite baseball player that I never got to watch, but I love his sweet swing. The Mariners are like my favorite franchise to root for. Just like, hey, hopefully they're going to be good, and they're whatever. They're just okay, I guess. But Cal Raleigh really just selling the bag, and I think being the player that he's not this bad, but we just didn't think of him as a 60 home run guy. Like that's just not who he was. A great player, but not a 60 home run guy. And so I think that whole thing got overblown last year. Glad he did not win this MVP because look at the follow-up season. But the Mariners are in a weird spot. Everybody in this division looking at it is in a strange spot. The Oakland A's are not the Oakland A's anymore. And that's sad. They're going to sell whatever they have left, move to Vegas. I don't even really want to talk about them because that whole situation pisses me off. Teams that have owners that don't appreciate and don't care about their fan base and that are willing to sell them out for basically nothing, you have no respect from me. You have no respect from the baseball community. You should sell the team if that's how you feel and that you believe that Las Vegas is a better market. No, Oakland was a good market and had good fans. You just didn't invest in your team, and that's why the Oakland A's are what they've been for the last 5 to 10 years. It's because of the owner, and it's that simple. He gets rid of any of the talent that he had in that organization, whether it be Josh Donaldson, whether it be Matt Olson, and others, and just brings in trash. Nick Kurtz, great player, and will he remain an athletic? Who knows, because of how this ownership group has been. So, I mean, hey, you made the move for Luis Severino. How's that working out for you? Every time he pitches at home, it's a slugfest, right? So, I don't know. The A's are a weird situation. This whole division is a weird situation. If I had to pick a winner, I'll give it to the Mariners just because they went to the ALCS last year. That's the team that I want to come out of this division. Not really a huge fan of Texas. I would like to see them, though, trade Corey Seager. I do want to see him be on a contender one more time, really, before the end of his career starts to kick in. Not having the greatest season. He's had a little bit of injury trouble recently, but he's still a great player and still somebody who deserves to be on a winning roster, much more than other guys. And obviously, the rest of this division is just whatever. Houston has had this major fall from grace. I mean, it's possible that Altuve leads them on this run, maybe Jeremy Pena, who knows? But yeah, this is a rough division. Like I said, I'll give it to the Seattle Mariners. Now on to the National League, and starting with honestly the most interesting division in all of baseball, in my opinion, with all the storylines going into the season, how this season has shaken up from the beginning to where we are now with the All-Star break, the NL East, where you got the Braves on top, 2 games ahead of the Phillies. Then you got the Marlins, who are 7 games over 500, a great season for them. The Nationals, who have one of the best offenses in baseball. And then the New York Mets, right where they belong at the bottom of that division. After all that talk, that's where they end up yet again. So let's look at each team here. The Braves got off to a really hot start and then cooled off a lot in these last month and a half or so, similar to the Yankees, except they've kind of held on a little bit more, but they had a much bigger lead as well. The Phillies, just always a consistent team, always going to be a contender, and I do believe that when you look at that roster, it really starts with the pitching. Christopher Sanchez, he didn't have a great performance in that All-Star game, but who cares? I mean, he's been really good all season, 2.6 ERA. He's one of the front runners in the NL for the Cy Young. If it doesn't go to Jacob Mizorowski, I would expect it to go to him. And I just see with that roster, I see consistency. Kyle Schwarber, you know exactly what you're going to get from him. Bryce Harper has transitioned great into this older baseball player who can play first base. I think he's done a great job there being a team leader and a guy that, honestly, they've really gotten everything they could have out of this contract in a way that, same year that he was a free agent, Manny Machado was a free agent. And what can the Padres say they've gotten from him? He's been okay, but he hasn't been what Bryce Harper's been for the Philadelphia Phillies. So I do believe that they're in a good spot there. As far as the Marlins, I would say a surprise, but honestly not really, because they have a lot of good young players there who are making a mark. And if you look at that roster, you say a similar thing that we said about those teams in the American League who are just young, fun to watch, good players. And I do believe that this isn't their year, unfortunately. I mean, look, they could make a more of a push, but I just don't think they have a complete team yet. It's unfortunate because if they were in a different division, I don't think I'd be talking like that, honestly. If they were in the American League, I wouldn't be talking like that. But because they're in the NL and because they're in the NL East, it's hard to have faith in what they're going to be able to do down the stretch against some of these teams, the Braves, the Phillies, and even the Nationals, who, let's pivot over to them, have just been absolutely torrid at the plate. Great hitters, James Woods, C.J. Abrams, just wrecking the baseball. I got no clue where this came from. I mean, we knew those guys were good, but for the rest of the lineup to be stepping up the way that it has, you got 30-year-old rookies pitching to a 3 ERA. I mean, it's just crazy stuff, becoming all-stars there. Washington, again, in a similar situation to the Marlins. I think if this year wasn't such a good year for the NL and such a strong year as far as those wild card contenders, I do believe that they'd be in a premium spot to compete. If they were in the American League, they would definitely be at the top of one of these divisions, but that's unfortunately not the case. And we did see the flaws that they have as a young team against the Yankees in this 3-game set. Their bullpen is shot. No other way to put it. They don't have a bullpen at all. If they want to compete, if they want to buy at the deadline, they're going to have to be making those kind of acquisitions. And I don't know how much you can do to improve this roster at this moment right now. And then the New York Mets. Where do I even begin? I don't believe that Juan Soto was the right player to bring to their organization. And I'll give you one reason why. He's ruined every single bit of chemistry that roster had from 2024. You saw it last year when they got off to that huge 45-24 start. missed the playoffs. And all of the infighting that happened within that clubhouse with a roster that was mainly the same, plus Juan Soto, he was the source of all that division, in my opinion. You had Lindor, who was your team leader, your team captain. He's getting older, and he doesn't want to defer to a Juan Soto, even though he's making so much money. And I really do believe that that was the source of all the problems that they've had this year. A couple bright spots, though, for the New York Mets. Yeah, Juan Soto's an all-star. Who cares? The real all-star from that team, and all my friends know, Luke Weaver, sub-2 ERA, coming back from that awful season, awful half of the season last year for the New York Yankees, comes to the Mets, has a couple bad games at the beginning of the year, and then has this huge scoreless inning streak now that he's on. He has been a dog once again, and he's the pitcher that I knew he could be, and that he has been for the Yankees for basically a year and a half there, where last year he got hurt and wasn't really the same, but before that he hadn't given up a run all year. Literally had a 0 ERA. So it's tough. It's tough. I really wish he was still on the roster. I really wish he was still a Yankee. Hopefully they could still make a move for him at this deadline. I don't know that that would happen though. Crosstown trade, not really something that I would see. And I do believe for the Mets that that's a bullpen piece that you want to build around. Even a Devin Williams, I mean, you give him so much money, you kind of have to build around him, because who's going to pick up that contract in such a bad year? I don't really expect that. I do think as well, sell the guys who just don't matter. And again, it comes down to contracts. It comes down to, their youth playing well. AJ Ewing, Carson Bench, those guys have performed. They've shown you that they want to be part of this team. They want to be part of this roster. Go out there and be dogs. Keep playing well, because, listen, it's not going to show in the record, but those guys are going to be making a name for themselves, bringing up their bringing up their value just as players in general. And if the Mets do want to make a push, do want to make a move next year, I do believe that they're going to be a huge part of what they're going to be able to do as a roster, as a team. That being said, the guys who were young a couple of years ago and have now transitioned into that older role, Brett Beatty, you got to say goodbye. I do believe he's got to be traded at the deadline, and I do believe he has some value as a utility player for a playoff team, but not on the New York Mets. Not 17 games under 500 with about 80 games left. It's just not meant to be. I don't think that the Mets are making the postseason this year. I don't think that he's going to help them make the postseason this year. And honestly, I think they should sell everybody who is not worth keeping, not worth building around. So whether that's keeping Lindor and keeping Soto, keeping Weaver, keeping Devin Williams, I think you could get rid of a Freddie Peralta. I think you could get rid of potentially a Clay Holmes. I mean, it's going to require a true rebuild for next year while still having a lot of talent on the roster, but it's a true rebuild on those ancillary pieces, which we talked about in the last episode, are so important for a championship team. So looking at this division again to wrap on this, because I really do believe the NL East is it's really an interesting and fascinating division. I mean, you got 4 teams really jockeying for that first place spot. Atlanta here kind of falling off. I'm going to give it to the Phillies. I just believe in that roster a little bit more than I do, say, Atlanta, just because they've been there. And Atlanta did win that World Series, but the Phillies have been more consistent over these last 3 to 4 years than the Braves have been. So I would like to give the NL East to the Philadelphia Phillies. Moving on to another interesting division with the NL Central, the Brewers. All of a sudden, the model of consistency, the model of winning games big, the model of being a good baseball team. Top of that division, leading the Cubs by 5 games. The Cubs in a good spot too, 12 games over 500. Then you got St. Louis and the Pirates, and then the Reds bringing up the rear. I do think that Mizorowski, if he stays healthy, wins this Cy Young. I just don't really see any other way about it. He's sub-2 ERA as well. Just a really great pitcher. I mean, you're throwing 104 as a starter in the 6th, 7th inning. I mean, that's just wild. That's wild stuff to me. I don't know how you can step into the box as a hitter and not fear that and just be like, whoa, that's okay. I mean, you saw how the Yankees went up and down against him. I mean, 3 straight strikeouts in the beginning. This was a while ago, obviously, but just what a guy. What a pitcher. He's bulked up so much since last season where he was sitting around 99, 100. Nothing to scoff at, obviously, but I mean, just to be able to throw 104 consistently like that, 103, 104, absolutely insane. The Brewers are in a really good spot. They got a really good roster. William Contreras, always a good player. Moving on to the Cubs, I just don't love what I see. Now, again, 12 games over 500, but this is your division. Like, you go to Milwaukee and you sell out their building, that says something about the team that you're supposed to be. And I do think, again, you're having a good season at 54-42. I mean, that is the same record as the Yankees, but guess what? You're not the Yankees. You're the Chicago Cubs. You got to be leading that division right now. No excuses. And I do believe, honestly, they're in a similar spot as the Yankees, where what are you doing? What moves are you going to make at the deadline? Are you trying to improve? How can you improve, right? Dansby Swanson is the heart and soul of that team. We know that. What else can you do? What else can you provide that's going to, lead you into a potential winning of this division? Because right now the Brewers are in control, and that's not something that should be happening in Chicago land. Same thing, honestly, for the Cardinals, although they have a weaker roster, obviously, but they're in the same spot. I mean, between the Cardinals and the Cubs, this is your division. It should never be going to the Brewers, who obviously in these last couple of years have been really, really good, but a very competitive division, and it's coming down to one team. I don't believe that it should be like that. The Pirates always showing some life. Skeens having a weird season right now. His velo's dropped a little bit. Not really sure what's going on there. Hope all is good. Hope the health is good. I would potentially shut him down. I mean, he's so important to your team. So hopefully he has a couple bounce back starts outside of this All-Star break. Kind of gets you going again. And looking forward to this back half of the season for them. Yeah, the Reds are the Reds. They're not really that important. I hate to say that because Cincinnati's a good baseball town, but it is what it is. With this division, I would just say this. It's similar to the AL Central where whoever comes out of it, you just never really believe in them fully when they go up against a Braves, Phillies, Dodgers, Giants kind of team. They're just a B tier team. And I don't know why that is, because they do have guys, they do have dogs, but it just doesn't feel like they can compete with those A squads. So I'm not really sure, who I would pick in this division. The Brewers are, again, like we said, 5 games up. I don't necessarily believe that they're going to continue playing at, 615 pace as far as their percentage for baseball. I just don't think that they're that good of a baseball team. That being said, I don't know if the Cubs can catch them. So I would still give the division to the Brewers. I don't think the Cardinals or Cubs are going to catch them. I would look out for those 2 teams in the wild card, though, for the NL. That being said, I would say for the Brewers, in order to keep control of this division, you do need to hit a little bit better. Now, relying on that pitching, that's the perfect pitching to fall back on, but I don't think that any team should rely on its pitching so heavily, because what happens when a guy has a bad start? You just lose? That can't happen. So you'd love to see a little bit more from the Brewers lineup, but I do think they're still in a good spot, and I would still pick them to win the NL Central. And finally now, moving on to the National League West, where the Dodgers, once again, top of that division. Nothing changes. They make their moves in the offseason. They sign everybody that's noteworthy. They pay them in deferred payments until the end of time. And then they come out here and have the best record in baseball at the All-Star break. It's the story as old as time. Hate to see it once again, but you know what? Like I've said many times, the Dodgers are the new Yankees, and they're the new standard in baseball. And it sucks to see it that way, because the Yankees should be that. But again, the Dodgers are the new Yankees, the standard in baseball. I mean, the Diamondbacks have a couple All-Stars. Corbin Carroll, great player. The Padres, perennial letdown. Every year it feels like, hey, they go from 95 wins and a wild card to 85 wins, missing the playoffs. 95 wins and a wild card, 85 wins, missing the playoffs. Right now they're 500. They could always make a push at the end of the season. But I think the biggest disappointment in this division is the San Francisco Giants. You hire Tony Vitello to be your new manager. No major league experience, no minor league experience, but only college experience. Not that that's a bad thing necessarily, but I do think baseball is a little different than a sport like football or basketball. Making that jump is a little bit harder, because it's not like you're recruiting guys. These are guys who have been brought up through the system, through the program, and it's a little bit different. You just have to be there for it. You have to go through those motions, be a coach at AA, be a manager at AAA to get to that big league spot. To have to experience that, I do believe, is a huge part of being a manager at the major league level. So I do think, not necessarily that it was a mistake for them to hire him, but I don't think they had the team for them to hire him. And I do think that that's the major problem. Another thing, investing in Rafael Devers, big no-no for me. I hate investing in guys who have bad personalities. That's why I said that the Juan Soto to the Mets thing wasn't a good idea. Not that I didn't love Juan Soto on the Yankees, but I didn't think that he was a good, trusty locker room guy. Like, he just doesn't seem like the kind of guy who's going to mesh and gel with everybody, even when things aren't going well. I feel like he's very selfish, and I see the same thing from Devers. And you saw that in a couple altercations this season where he gets pinch ran for and he's telling the manager, no, I'm not coming off the bases. Buddy, you are coming off the base paths because the manager just told you to. So I don't love him. I don't love what they're building over there in San Francisco. I do love Logan Webb. I do love their pitching, but I just don't think that this was the kind of time necessarily to be buying into a Tony Vitello, to be trying and experimenting with stuff like that. Too many different moving pieces at this time. Obviously going to give this division to the LA Dodgers, but if we were going to, wrap on this whole National League here, they are obviously the favorites going into the postseason. No matter what happens in this second half, I think we're going to be pretty set on that. Who are they going to be facing, though, in that NLCS? I do want to say that it would probably be the Phillies or the Braves. I give those teams a chance. The Brewers have a chance, obviously, the Cubs as well. I'm not going to say that the Cardinals are going to get that far. I mean, potentially even the Cubs don't get that far. So, I don't know. For the Dodgers, it's just play your game, play the way you're capable of playing, and nobody should beat you. Legitimately, nobody should beat you with the stars that you have on that team. Need to see a little bit more from Kyle Tucker, but other than that, their problems are really minute. Going back over to the American League, just to wrap on them, the Yankees should be the favorite in the American League. We've said this many times. Their only competition should be the Rays. I mean, looking at these other teams, the White Sox and the Guardians have the second best records outside those two teams. They're just not on the same level as you guys. So go out there, get the job done. It should be Yankees, Rays in the ALCS. And then if I had to pick a World Series at this moment, I still say I'm taking the Yankees out of the AL. I'm still saying I'm taking the Dodgers out of the NL. I do see a rematch, but I'm not going to give you guys a prediction on that because I think we all know what I would be saying, and I don't want to say that just yet. So here we are at the All-Star break. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this little recap. I know it's a little longer video, but I do think that it's important to just go through each team, go through them, give them kind of their due, shout out the teams that have been doing well, because there are teams that have really overperformed here. The White Sox, obviously. You've had the Nationals overperform, the Marlins, other teams. So I do think it's fair to give those teams credit where credit is due, give them their flowers. And honestly, I think it's really fun to look at baseball as a whole. It's different than other sports because it's very local and doesn't get covered as much by the national news. So giving each team their flowers, kind of going into what the team's strengths are and what each team needs to do to improve, I do think that's something that's really awesome to look at. Obviously, here in the New York market, we got a lot of bias towards the Yankees and Mets, but I still love baseball. I still love talking about it, no matter which team is doing well, which team is going on. So that's going to be a wrap for us here. We're going to have a trade deadline episode in a couple weeks that's going to be, really kicking up with all the moves that are happening and who we think is really going to be moving at that time. Obviously going to be a big deal in a couple weeks. So that'll be happening. Obviously going to return to the daily episodes once we get out of this All-Star break. But this has been Yankees in 10 Special Edition All-Star Break, brought to you by Mike and V Sports Talk.